I'm saying Thomas Friedman does not need introduction. You're for sure a well-known journalist, a thinker, a writer, and a good friend. For you to have come all the way to Sulaimani and to be part of Sulaimani Forum means a great deal to the people of Sulaimani, to the people of Kurdistan, and indeed to the people of Iraq. What you have told me today, that you wanted to talk about everything but the Middle East.
That's right, exactly.
You want to talk about the world. Yes, all politics is local. I care about my hometown. I care about Kurdistan. I care about Iraq and the Middle East. But for sure, there is so much going on outside the world, outside this part of the world. It's time we are not so self-centric. We need to see beyond where we are today. So with that introduction, I want to let you talk because they're interested in hearing you talk, and we can have a conversation after that.
Great. Well, Barham, thank you so much. It's a treat and an honor to be here. You know what a fan I am of AUIS and the honor you gave me 2 years ago to be the commencement speaker. Still one of the great thrills. So when Dr. Barham asked me to maybe do a talk, I said, what would you like? And he said, well, why don't you talk about the new book you're writing? So I am working on a new book. It's kind of the successor to The World is Flat. It's called Thank You for Being Late. The title of the book comes from, I would be meeting people for breakfast in Washington, D.C. over the last year. And sometimes people would come 10, 15, 20 minutes late. And they'd say, Tom, I'm really sorry. It was the weather, the traffic, the subway. The dog ate my homework. It was my kids. And I found myself spontaneously saying to them, actually, Barham, thank you for being late.
I have been late in meetings with you, absolutely.
Exactly. Because you were late, I've been eavesdropping on their conversation. Fascinating. I've been people watching the lobby. Fantastic. And I just connected two ideas I've been struggling with for a month. So thank you for being late. And people started to get into it. And they'd say, well, you're welcome. And so, can you tell them to... So what the book is really about is a desire to pause and reflect on where the world is right now. Because I knew something was changing. In 2004, I sat down and wrote a book called The World is Flat. And it was about how the world was getting connected, how everyone could suddenly compete, connect, and collaborate to a degree we'd never seen before. 7 years later, in 2011, I wrote another book about America. It was called That Used to Be Us. And when I sat down to write that book in 2011, the first thing I did was get the first edition of The World is Flat off my bookshelf, just to remind myself what I wrote. So I opened it to the index. I looked under A, B, C, D, E, F, F, A, F, A, C, E. Facebook wasn't in it. Yeah, when I was here in Kurdistan, 2005, telling people the world is flat. We're all connected. Facebook didn't exist. Twitter was still a sound. The cloud was still in the sky. 4G was a parking place. LinkedIn was a prison. Applications were what you sent to college. Big data was a rap star. And Skype was a typographical error. All of those things happened in the 7 years between those two books. So friends, something really big is happening. So what is it? Well, I am a columnist for the New York Times. I've been a columnist for 21 years. So I have to take you for a moment into my world and tell you how I write a column. Because a news story is meant to inform. I can come to Kurdistan, I can interview Dr. Barham, and I can inform better or worse. That's not the business I'm in. I'm in the business of writing opinion. My job is to provoke. I'm either in the heating business or the lighting business. I'm either heating up an emotion in you or illuminating something for you, or ideally both, and producing a reaction. And if I do it right, I'll produce one of a dozen reactions. Barham will read my column and say, I didn't know that. That's a good reaction. I never looked at it that way. That's a good reaction. I never connected those things. That's a good reaction. You said exactly what I felt but didn't know how to say. That's my favorite. I want to kill you dead, you and all your offspring. That's a reaction. I get that sometimes. All of those will tell me I produce heat or light. Now, to produce heat or light requires a chemical reaction. And I have to combine 3 ingredients. First is, what is my value set? What do I believe? What am I pushing? Am I a socialist, a libertarian, a capitalist, a Marxist, a Keynesian? How do I lean into the world? What am I pushing? Second, how do I think the machine works? So the machine is my shorthand for what are the biggest forces shaping more things in more places, in more ways, on more days. Because as a columnist, what I'm trying to do is take my values and push this machine. And if I don't know how it works, I either won't push it or I'll push it in the wrong direction. And lastly, what have I learned about people and culture? How different people and culture are impacted by the machine, the way it works, and how they impact the machine. Mix those 3 together, stir, bake for 45 minutes. If you do it right, you'll produce heat or light. So what my book is about is me pausing to reflect, well, what is my value set? I'm not going to talk about that tonight, but it has to do with the fact that I grew up in Minnesota in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, in a time and a place where politics worked. Second part of the book is, how do I think the machine works today? That's what I'm going to talk about. And the third part, which we won't have time for, is people and culture. So how do I think the machine works today? What are the biggest forces shaping more things in more places, in more ways, on more days, including right here in Kurdistan and at AUIS? So I read a book 2 years ago, had a big impact on me. It was called The Second Machine Age by Andy McAfee and Eric Brynjolfsson. And what they argued was that the first machine age was built on the steam engine. And the steam engine doubled in power every 70 years. And it required human physical labor to direct. What they argue is that we're in the second machine age, and the second machine age is built on Moore's Law. So Moore's Law is a concept coined by Gordon Moore, one of the founders of Intel, the chip company. And Moore's Law says that the speed and power of microchips will double every 24 months. Now, he said that exactly 50 years ago, and 50 years later, it still exists. In other words, technology, which is all driven by Moore's Law, the speed and power of microchips constantly doubling, is in what is called a nonlinear exponential curve. If you put Moore's Law on a graph, it looks like this, okay? And we're right here. And to explain the power of exponential, Andy and Eric use a famous story of the man who invented the game of chess. He gave the game to the king loved it so much, he said, "How can I reward you, good sir?" The man said, "I just want to feed my family, your highness. If you would just put 1 grain of rice on the first square of this chessboard, and then 2 on the second, and 4 on the next, and 8 on the next, 16 on the, just keep doubling it, like Moore's Law, my family will be fine." The king said, "It shall be done," not realizing that when you double something 63 times, the number you get is 18 quintillion, more rice than existed in the world. So that is the power of an exponential. Now, the engineers at Intel recently did a study of the Volkswagen Beetle. The first Volkswagen Beetle came out in 1971. And they said, what if the Volkswagen Beetle improved at the same doubling rate of microchips? And they figured out that if it did, it would go, today's Volkswagen Beetle would go 300,000 miles an hour, it would get 2 million miles per gallon, and it would cost 4 cents. So that's the power of exponential doubling. And what Andy and Eric's book is about is we just entered the second half of the chessboard, when the doubling starts to get really big. And you start to see some really funky stuff. You start to see cars that can drive themselves and computers that can beat any human in chess or any other game you like. So I very much like their theory. They're friends of mine, they're authors of this book. But I told them you're a little incomplete because there are two other exponentials we're in the middle of. One is Mother Nature. Climate change is, if you put global average temperature on a curve, it looks exactly like that. Exactly like Moore's Law. It's in a non-linear acceleration. Climate change and environmental degradation. And if you put globalization, what I call the market, on a graph, that would be everything from trade to Skype calls to cell phone diffusion. What does it look like? It looks like that. So if you want to know how the machine works today, what you're all in the middle of, me very much the same, is that the three largest forces on the planet, which I call the market, globalization, Moore's Law, that's technology, and Mother Nature, are all in a simultaneous nonlinear acceleration. And this is driving everything. So I basically lay all that out. I do the Moore's Law part. I'll just tell you briefly how I explain that. So if you take a computer, I don't have my laptop here, but if you take a computer, today's computer is made of 5 key parts. One is the microchip, the processor. One is the storage chip. One is the software. One is the networking. And the other is the sensor, the camera, okay? In fact, all 5 of those things are in a Moore's Law today. All right? They're all 5 in a Moore's Law. And what has happened in basically since 2007, 2007 was a very important year because that's when the Apple iPhone came out. Since 2007, all of these things have melded into something we call the cloud. The cloud. All these accelerations of technology. Well, I never use the term the cloud in my book because it sounds so soft, so fluffy, so benign. Sounds like a Joni Mitchell song. I've looked at clouds from above. This ain't no cloud. This is a supernova. A supernova is the explosion of a star. It's the largest force in nature. And what we are seeing is an ever-accelerating supernova. And what this supernova is doing of technology is that it is changing 4 kinds of power. First, it's changing the power of one. What one person can do today as a maker or a breaker is unlike anything we have ever seen before. Second, it's changing the power of machines. Machines can now touch, feel, think. They have all the senses that we have. The example I love to give is really the world changed on February 4th, 2011. When, of all places, an American game show called Jeopardy had a match, and there were 3 contestants. One was named Brad Jennings. He was the all-time Jeopardy champion. Ken Jennings. Second was Brad Rutter. He was the second all-time Jeopardy champion. And the third contestant just went by his last name, Watson. Watson passed on the first question, and the second question was, it's used by a dealer in a casino and worn on the foot of a horse. And in under 2.4 seconds, Mr. Watson buzzed in before the 2 humans and said, "What is a shoe?" And the world has never been the same. For the first time, a computer competing on Jeopardy, it was IBM's Watson computer, figured out a pun, posed in natural language, and answered in natural language. The power of machines is in a place we've never seen before. Third, the power of many. is in a place we've never seen before. We now are a force of and in nature. Human beings have never been a force of and in nature. The new geophysical era we are in is named after us. It's called the Anthropocene. And lastly, we're seeing a change in the power of ideas. Ideas now circulate at a velocity we've never seen before. Barack Obama ran for president in America saying marriage is an institution between a man and a woman. He will leave the presidency declaring marriage is an institution between any two people who love each other, any two humans, and he will be following Ireland, a Catholic country, in that position. We are seeing ideas circulate and change at a velocity we've never seen before. So what this is all doing, these four new powers, is changing every job, it's changing every country, and it's changing every leader, posing a whole new set of challenges. So very quickly, how is it changing every job? So we at the New York Times, we had a piece about a year ago now, maybe a little more, about dairy farms in upstate New York, where the cows are entirely milked by robots. No human hand touches these cows. So if you were an 18-year-old kid who graduated high school in Buffalo, New York, and dreamed of working on a dairy farm, I hope you were a computer science major, because that is as close as you will get to one of those cows, right? So what is happening is every middle-class job is being pulled in three directions at once. It's being pulled up, it requires more skill. It's being pulled out, more machines, robots, software, and people in India and China and Kurdistan can compete for it. And it's being pulled down. It's being outsourced to history, made obsolete faster than ever. Every middle-class job is being pulled in three directions at once. And this is posing a huge educational challenge because my parents went to college for 4 years. They got knowledge there that basically lasted them their whole career. That is simply no longer the case. Last week I was in Dallas, Texas at AT&T. AT&T, our big telephone company, Ma Bell we call her, has 300,000 employees. Now I'm very interested in going to these big companies because when you are a global phone company, you're living on the edge of the volcano. So how does AT&T educate its employees today? Very simple. By the way, this is coming to Kurdistan, because trust me, if that's what AT&T is doing today, it's what everyone's going to have to do in the next 5 years. So they begin every year by their chairman, Randall Stevenson, now gives an address to the 50,000 top managers, who then do town hall meetings with the entire AT&T staff, and they are radically transparent about where their business is going. We are going here, we're going to be in this business, this is the world we're living in. Then they put every AT&T employee on LinkedIn. Your whole biography, all your education, everywhere you've worked in the company. Now AT&T can look down, we've got this guy named Barham Salih, we're going there. Let's look at his LinkedIn profile. Barham, you got some stuff we need, but you don't have some other stuff. Where we're going, because we're going there. So they partnered with Udacity and created an online university. They'll now give Dr. Barham $8,000 a year to take all the online courses he needs to be aligned with where AT&T is going. And those badges will then go into his AT&T profile. If, on the other hand, oh, by the way, one thing, they'll give you the $8,000, up to $8,000, but you have to take the courses on your own time. More will be on you. And if Dr. Barham says, you know, I really don't want to take those courses, AT&T has a wonderful severance package for Dr. Barham, but he won't be working there anymore, okay? So that's basically where the world of work is going. Permanent learning, lifetime, all the time. Because what sustained the middle class in America for 50 years was something called the high-wage, middle-skilled job. High-wage, middle-skilled. Today, maffy, high-wage, middle-skilled job. There is no such animal in the zoo anymore. There will be a high-wage, high-skilled job. There'll be a middle-wage, middle-skilled job. But there will be nothing in between. And this is going to require a whole shift in how we approach work and how we are educated and how companies have a social contract with their employees. What LinkedIn is doing now is what I call intelligent assistance. So they're creating a graph where their goal is to put every job offer in America online. Their goal is to have you also with your skills online. Their goal is to have every university online that would offer you the skills to get that job. And at the same time, what they are doing is analyzing. Let's look at a profession, accounting. Which university has placed more accountants at Fortune 500 companies at the top level? Do you know who that is, actually? Notre Dame. Who knew? But we know now. So if you want to get an accounting degree, maybe you'll go to Notre Dame, not Harvard or somewhere else. So we're using big data now to create intelligent assistance. That's what's happening in the world of work. What's happening to countries is the following. These three accelerations are like a hurricane. And what they are doing is they are blowing up weak states and they are stressing out strong states. So the countries that are being blown up first, I hate to tell you, but they're countries whose borders were all straight lines. Because these are the most artificial countries. So they're like caravan homes in a trailer park. They have no basement. They're built on a slab of cement with no basement and no foundation. And these accelerations, they're like a hurricane. And what you're seeing today, Libya, Iraq, Syria, Mali, Chad, Niger, I can go through the whole list of them, is a hurricane going through a trailer park. And what it is doing, basically, is creating a new geopolitical divide in the world between the world of order and the world of disorder. That's the new divide in the world. The new divide is not east, west, north, south, communist, capitalist. The new divide is between the world of order and the world of disorder, and what's going on in the Mediterranean today and through Libya and Central Africa are tens of millions of people trying now to get out of the world of disorder into the world of order. That is the big geopolitical shift going on in the world today. Thank God Kurdistan's borders are not straight lines. You're going to be fine, okay? Iraq, I'm not so sure. What is happening to strong countries is that weak countries explode, strong countries implode, okay? So what's happening in all the strong democracies and autocracies, Russia and China, is that our borders hold, but our politics blow up. And that's what you're seeing today in the United States. You're seeing it in Britain, you're seeing it in Europe, and trust me, you would see it in China and Russia if there weren't such an iron fist. Because the old left-right politics born of the New Deal and the Industrial Revolution cannot possibly manage the choices we need to make in this age of acceleration. So if you ask me where we're going in America, I can only tell you my politics. So my politics is that I am a non-partisan extremist. I'm a non-partisan extremist. I'm actually to the left of Bernie Sanders, and I'm to the right of the Wall Street Journal editorial page at the same time. That is, I believe we need universal single-payer health care in America. I think we need a minimum income. I think we need universal pre-K. I think we need a massive expansion of college and education grants. And I think we need a huge investment in infrastructure. But unlike Bernie, I don't have the burn, okay? To pay for that, I think we need to get radically entrepreneurial. So I'm in favor of eliminating all corporate taxes. So I'm for eliminating all corporate taxes, all personal income taxes, and I would replace them with a carbon tax, a tax on sugar, a tax on bullets, and a small VAT. We have to raise money in a totally different way because we actually can't afford anymore the behaviors that we've been engaged in. You know, President Obama and the Republicans 3 years ago agreed on a new tax package. And it was a surcharge on the wealthy that would raise $600 billion over 10 years, $60 billion a year. That same year, we had a hurricane, a superstorm Sandy. The cleanup for one storm, Superstorm Sandy, cost $60 billion. The entire increment of that tax was taken by one superstorm. So I think we're going to have to radically explode our politics and reshuffle the decks, and I think we're just at the beginning of that process, and that's what this election is really all about. Now, I just make two last points, and then we go to questions. What do you need as a country to thrive in this world? You need resilience, and you need healthy interdependencies, okay? United States and Canada, healthy interdependencies. Russia and Ukraine, unhealthy interdependency, okay? America and Mexico, really healthy interdependency. Baghdad and Sulaimani, unhealthy interdependency, okay? So you're falling together rather than rising together. Now, when I think about resilience, because when you're facing, we're really in the middle of three climate changes at once. One is technological, one is geoeconomic, and one is literally in the climate. So when you're facing climate change, what you want is resilience. So what I say in the book is, who can I go to for advice on resiliency? And I thought about it for a second, and I realized I know a woman who's the expert on this subject. She's 3.8 billion years old, and her name is Mother Earth. She's dealt with more climate changes than anybody. So let's interview Mother Earth and ask her what her killer apps are for adjusting to climate change. Well, what she said to me is, Tom, first of all, I'm incredibly adaptive through natural selection. I'm incredibly diverse. I love pluralism. Pluralism of plants and animals, diversity. Try 20 different species, see who works out. I'm incredibly sustainable. Everything is food. Eat, food, poop, seed, eat, food, poop, seed. She's very sustainable. Nothing is wasted. She's incredibly entrepreneurial. Any open niche in nature, Mother Nature fills it. And lastly, she believes in the laws of bankruptcy. There are no state-owned industries in Mother Nature. She kills all her failures to nourish her successes. My argument is that the cultures and countries that most approximate those attributes are the ones who will do best in the age of acceleration. But Mother Nature does that unconsciously. So we have to do it consciously. That's where politics comes in. But we have another problem. Another problem. And this is what the last chapter of the book is called. People sometimes ask me, Tom, what's the best question you ever got on book tour? What's the best? I've been on book tour since 1989. I wrote Beirut to Jerusalem. I've been on selling my books ever since. I say that's an easy question. 1989, I'm in Portland, Oregon, in the Opera House there. I was just there 2 weeks ago again. Young man, I was selling Lexus in the Olive Tree. Young man stood up in the balcony, the far balcony in question time, and said, Mr. Friedman, I have a simple question. Is God in cyberspace? I thought, oh my God, is God in cyberspace? I don't know. I really felt stupid. I didn't know what to answer. Is God in cyberspace? I hate standing in front of an audience. I didn't know what to say. I was embarrassed. So I went home. I called my spiritual teacher. He's a rabbi, lives in Amsterdam, married to a Dutch priest, great scholar, named Zvi Marks. I called Zvi. I said, Zvi, I got a question I never have had before. Is God in cyberspace? What should I have answered? He said, Tom, it's very simple. In our tradition, we have two concepts of the Almighty. One is that He's Almighty, and He destroys evil, and He rewards good. And if that's your view of God, He sure isn't in cyberspace, which is full of lying, prostitution, gambling, cheating, cybercrime. Okay? But he said, thank God we have another view of the Almighty that competes with it, and that is that God manifests Himself by how we behave. So if you want God to be in cyberspace, you've got to bring Him there by how you behave there. Why is this? I found myself retelling this story lately. Why was I retelling this story? Because these accelerations have brought us to a place as a humanity we have never been to before. In 1945, we entered a new world. We entered a world where one country could destroy everyone. It was us, and we proved it in Japan. We are now entering a world, we may not be there yet, but we're close, where one person can kill everyone. And at the same time, all of us can fix everything. With these tools we have now, one of us can destroy everyone, and all of us could actually fix everything. If we put our minds to it, we now have the tools to feed, house, and clothe every person on the planet, and educate. We have never been at this junction before. We have never been more godlike as a species. We have never stood with these powers before. And if you are godlike, you better have values. You better have values. And so this is the moment in the book where I say your spouse will jab you in the ribs and say, honey, can you believe we paid $32.95 for this? But I just have one piece of advice for you. And it's the first thing you learned in Sunday school or Saturday school or whatever was your faith school you went to. And it's your version of the golden rule. Do unto others as you wish them to do unto you. Because we now live in a world where more people can do unto you farther, faster, deeper, cheaper than ever before. And you can do unto others farther, faster, deeper, cheaper than ever before. We've never been at this junction, and therefore values are going to matter more than ever. And that's why the book is called Thank You for Being Late. Because the world we're going into is a world where everything important is all and can only be done slowly. Everything that matters today can only be uploaded the old-fashioned way, with good teaching, good parenting, good governing, good spiritual leadership. Anything that's downloaded is crap. Everything that matters can only be uploaded the old-fashioned way, old and slow. And that requires good governance, good community, and good and strong families. So I end the book. My book has a theme song. I'm actually trying to buy it so when you open the book, it would play the song like a birthday card. And the song is by my favorite singer, Brandi Carlile. She's a country folk singer. And her song is called The I, E-Y-E, The I. And the main refrain is, you can dance in a hurricane as long as you're standing in the eye. And what you and I, you and Kurdistan, me and Bethesda, are all being asked to do, friends, today, is dance in a hurricane. And the only way you can do that, what is Donald Trump selling? He's selling a wall. It's a big lie. He's saying, I will protect you from the hurricane. No, 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 no. You need to build an eye. You need to move with the hurricane. You need to draw energy from it. But you need an anchor of stability, of good governance, good community, and good values that will allow you and enable you to have both an anchor and a sail. Because in this world, where things are so fast, everybody needs an anchor and a sail. So good luck here in Kurdistan, Barham, in building an eye to the hurricane. Thank you. Good. Good.